He's on the way out.
Expiring asset.
Good evening. This is Monday, June the 5th, 2023, and we are here for a governing body meeting, and I would ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Mayor Dunn is present and presiding. Councilmember Phila is absent. Councilmember Larson,
Here.
Councilmember Sippel,
Here.
Councilmember Eseltine,
Here.
Councilmember Kane,
Here.
Councilmember Harrison,
Here.
Councilmember Rawlings,
Here.
Councilmember Osmond. Here.
Thank you. The next order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance, and something that we have not had happen in quite a while. We have a scout present that is going to lead us in the pledge. And if I could ask you to come forward, please. And we'll first do the pledge, and then I'll ask you to introduce yourself. But since you don't have a flag in your hands, we will stand as we're able, and we will face the flag. Thank you.
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. Will you tell us your name and your scout rank, please?
My name is Eric Fowler, and I am a tenderfoot approaching on second class.
And you have two older brothers that happen to
Yes.
be Eagle Scouts?
Indeed.
So you are on the road to Eagle, I'm sure of
Yes,
that.
I have most of the requirements done.
That's wonderful. Well, we really appreciate your assistance tonight. Thank you so much, and good luck to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next item is the approval of the agenda. And I don't believe we have any modifications tonight.
Move
the
to
agenda.
approve.
Second.
A motion from Ms. Harrison, second from Mr. Sippel. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. It's approved unanimously. Thank you. And going now to citizen comments, we have 3 citizens who've signed in to speak on, I believe they're all non-agenda items, so I will call on you in the order that you signed in. Ask you to come forward, please, and state your name and address for the record. And if you could keep your comments to 3 to 5 minutes, that would be appreciated. Cindy Driscoll. Maybe,
Yeah.
Mr. Powell, are you able to turn that on? Looks like it's not really.
Here he comes.
Sorry. Well, I'll begin and
He-
it'll
He's
help the
coming right
picture.
in
Okay.
to help you. Mr. Pelger, thank you.
Should I wait? Give him a second?
Well, are you able to present without it?
Well, I can speak to it a little bit, but the pictures help explain what I'm trying to
Okay.
say, so. Well, anyway, my name is Cindy
Oh,
Driscoll.
here it is.
Oh, jackpot. Yeah,
Good.
I'm gonna point to a couple of things.
And did you
on the-
state your name and address? I'm not sure.
Sorry, my name is Cindy Driscoll. I live at 14737 Norwood.
Thank you.
Perfect. And what I'm going to talk about here, I'm going to point to it and then I'll get back in the microphone. These detention ponds that are right along there, there's 3 of them that run that direction. And the map is a little bit older just because the development has moved in a little bit. The houses are mostly built. But there's 3 detention ponds. And the condition of the detention pond is, I don't think it meets what the city had intended. It's supposed to be prairie grass. A lot of it is weed. I sit on the Master Finance Committee to the Leebrook section, and I am the HOA president for Town Manors, the townhomes. And people come to the meetings over a lot of strife in that area. And it's still under developer notice. It has not been turned over to the home builders or to the homeowners yet. And it is very frustrating having to explain that, yes, we can try to bring the builder to these things to his attention, but yet his standard versus what the standard of the community is are very different. And so trying to deal with the weeds, and the timing of when things are cut or trash and that sort of thing. So my concern is that the developer may not be living up to what the plan is, and I'd like to know when or how or if the city is going to inspect it or make sure that it's being built to this, the plan that was submitted to the city. And I can pictures of items that I'm talking about are
Ms. Driscoll, if you could email those pictures to our city administrator, Diane Stoddard,
Gotcha.
then she can review this with staff
Right.
once she has it.
All right, anything else for me?
No, but we appreciate your attendance.
Thank
and
you.
Bringing it to our attention. Thank you.
Who's the builder?
More than one.
Kelly Ballard. And if you'll state your name and address, please, for the record.
Hi, thank you. My name is Kelly Ballard, and I live at 14525 Meadow Lane. I'm in the same neighborhood as Cindy. I happen to be in the development that's in process, so it has not been turned over to the resident homeowners. It's still with the developer. I believe it is called Leabrook Townhome Manors LLC, even though we're villas. It's a long story of how it all transpired. But my real question, it's not so much as a comment as it is a question, and it relates to what Cindy was talking about, is what is the city's process for when a developer is working on an area? What is their inspection process to make sure that it is coming to the plan that the city agreed on? And that's really my only question. I'd like to know what it is that I, as a homeowner, when it comes time to actually be part of the community that takes over the association that already exists, but to take that over, what we're really getting, what maybe not been finished properly, that we would end up with the potential liability to the city to get it done, or to the community to get it done. So that's my question, is what is the process that the city has to make sure that a developer completes the process that they've agreed with the city before turnover?
Well, that'll be part of the information that Ms. Stoddard provides after she's had a chance to review the photos. She has your name and address and even a phone number, so she'll be in touch with you.
Thank you very much. I
Sure.
appreciate your time.
Thank you for coming. Dr. John Kenny.
Thank you. 9814 Overbrook Court, Leawood. I'm here because I am concerned about the overtaking of all of the unmanicured Leawood parkland by Bush Honeysuckle. And I talked to my elected city council members, and they directed me here. It is a problem, and it needs to be fixed, and so I just wanted to bring it to people's attention. Ultimately, it's wiping out all the native plants and tree seedlings and what have you. So if you look down the road 50 years, when the wonderful trees we have die, there won't be any seedlings to replace them, and that sounds kind of panicky, but that's really the way things are going to work.
And Dr. Kenny, I know that Brian Anderson sent you a long email, I believe, lengthy email regarding what he has done to date. Did you receive that?
No.
Well, we'll make sure that you get that.
Okay. I wasn't accusing anyone
Oh,
of
I know you
anything, and I
weren't.
think they
I know,
know
and I know
how to
you have a
take care
lot of
it.
expertise in this area.
It's a really tough job
Sure.
and probably expensive.
Well, thank you for coming.
Surely.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
That concludes our citizen comments who've signed in to speak this evening. We have no proclamations. We have no presentations or recognitions. We move now to special business 7A. Approve the city administrator's recommendation of the appointment of Dylan Gentry as Director of Information Technology effective June 12th, 2023. Ms. Stoddard?
Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. It's my pleasure to make this recommendation to you this evening. Mr. Gentry has a 19-year career working in information technology and specific expertise in infrastructure design, networking, security, help desk, and system administration. He has most recently been working in an IT management position with Johnson County, and we believe he would be a great fit for the city of Leawood in this position. So I recommend that we have him appointed effective June the 12th. happy to answer any questions you may have.
And I had the privilege of meeting with Mr. Gentry, and I concur he'll be a great addition to the team. Any questions from anyone?
Move to approve?
Second?
Motion from Mr. Azeltine and second from Ms. Larson to approve the appointment. If there's no further discussion, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. It's approved unanimously, and please tell him that we're delighted, and we'll look forward to working with him. Thank you. 7B is a public hearing to consider the vacation of a drainage easement located near 137th Street and Rowe Avenue, part of Lot 2 of the Villaggio at Leawood, within the city of Leawood, Johnson County, Kansas. This is the Aventino Development Company. And I will declare the public hearing open and ask, is there anyone present or online to speak to this item? And if so, if you'd please raise your hand.
Seeing none and hearing none, I move the public hearing be closed.
Second.
Motion from Ms. Villa to close the public hearing, second from Mr. Azeltine. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. It's approved unanimously. Thank you. 7C is an ordinance vacating a drainage easement located near 137th Street and Rowe Avenue, part of Lot 2, the Villaggio at Leawood, within the city of Leawood, Johnson County, Kansas. The petitioner is Aventino Development Company.
Move to approve?
Second.
Motion from Ms. Villa and second from Mr. Osmond. Any discussion? I believe,
Just have a comment.
sure.
If you haven't driven anywhere near the Aventino project, it's just really coming along beautifully. It's fascinating to see rooftops, coming down, because for all these years, I haven't seen rooftops right along there. And then I really appreciate what you're doing with the entrance monuments as well as the big corner piece that has looked sad for quite a while. So I think it's going to be a fabulous addition to the city of Leawood, and it's just coming along beautifully. Thank you.
Thank you for coming this evening. If there's no further discussion, roll call, please.
Councilmember Azeltine.
Aye.
Councilmember Sippel.
Aye.
Councilmember Larson.
Aye.
Councilmember Phila.
Aye.
Councilmember Osmond.
Aye.
Councilmember Rawlings.
Aye.
Councilmember Harrison.
Aye.
Councilmember Kane.
It's approved unanimously. Thank you. 7D is a resolution approving and authorizing the mayor to execute a professional services agreement between the city and Continental Consulting Engineers, Inc., in an amount not to exceed $76,230 pertaining to the site work for the 2023 75th Anniversary Art Commission, Reaching by William Nematoff. Do we have Ms. Kaufman? Yes. Would you like to make some comments? I hadn't planned to. You hadn't? Maybe Ms. Claxton's planning to.
Well, good evening, Mayor
Good
and
evening.
Council.
Good evening.
I think everything that was in the packet was pretty, explains everything in terms of the phasing that we're working on and how we plan to bring that forward. As far as any detailed questions regarding,
Fill amounts?
yes. I know
see
Mr. Lay
Lay
has that information.
He just walked
Yeah.
in.
He shared with me today, and I think also with Ms. Stoddard, that we've got about 1,500 yards of fill at Fire Station 1 that they can potentially move, and also another 1,000 yards at the Parks Maintenance Facility.
Oh.
And I don't know if you
Do
had
we
some
know
other
about
information
the
about
street
about the
work?
culvert and some of the work that needs to be done there.
Yeah, so on the street reconstruction project, we bid that last week, and it came in $700,000 over budget and over the engineer's estimate. We only had one bid. So we're gonna do some value engineering on it and then rebid it at the end of this year. So we do need, for this site, we need a total of 3,600 cubic yards, and we're hoping to be able to get about close to 2/3 of that with what we have at Fire Station 1 and at Parks Maintenance.
Okay. Very good. Thank you, Mr. Lay. Ms. Harrison?
Would the folks from Aventino who just walked out the door, possibly, there's a huge mountain of fill dirt at Aventino I drive by every day on my way to work. Is there any chance that we can make a deal with them for
Yeah,
some of
I
that?
just ran out to catch him, ask him about that, and he's actually taken it to Lashbrook, which
Oh,
is
God.
closer for him, but he said he would keep us in mind.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe he'll have a little extra.
Mr. Hazeltine?
Is this amount of fill enough for what we need to do to bring it above the floodplain?
It will get the art piece out of the floodplain. It'll be enough for that area, but it's not enough. As part of the parking lot, we need to build a berm, and so it wouldn't have, it doesn't have all the, it's not gonna be able to bring all the
So
fill
for
that we need. So we'll
any
still
of the
need some.
accoutrements other than the actual art piece, we would probably need more fill, you think?
Correct.
Okay.
And we can work on that. You know, if we don't build the parking lot up front, we can kind of bring fill in over time as we find some.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Sippel?
Mr. Lay, $76,000 to do this preliminary work from Continental Engineering. Without asking you to nail down any numbers, what pieces would yet have to be done to that site after we put the fill dirt, no, after we do this consulting project? What are the various steps that we would have to do before the art piece is ready to be installed?
So part of the contract for Continental, the first phase is to do the geotech
Right.
and the survey work. And so once we get the geotech back, if that shows that we can do a foundation in a reasonable fashion, we'll proceed forward with the design of the project. And then part of their, phase 2 of their scope is to get it through the Planning Commission and City Council. And once we get the art piece and that site approved through governing body, then we'll go out and bid the project. And the first, we'll break it out into different, alternates. And so we'll look and see what we can kind of pick and choose what we want to do, but the first step would be to install the base for the art piece.
So the actual field work involved in this 76,000 is to do some core samples, to find out what's underneath the surface, but the rest of it is structured planning and pieces of the plan. There's no other field work involved in it.
That's correct.
Okay. All right.
And we did, I mentioned this in the write-up, but we did reach out to another engineering firm earlier on, probably about 6 months ago, and they gave us a scope, and it was really close to what the scope for Continental's is. So we worked on Continental trying to get the scope or their cost down, but it still came in about the same cost.
And how long will it take to get those geo samples back? What I'm concerned about is when we were talking about this months ago, there was some discussion that this could be a low area, a swampy area. So I don't know what kind of mush is down there underneath the surface and how far we would have to go to put a stable foundation, because it's a big, heavy piece. So I'm just kind of concerned about what we might find there.
Right. It'll probably take a month in order to get the cores, and so we'll know in about a month, and then we can proceed forward once we get that information.
Thank you.
We did have something done that told us it wasn't wetlands.
Correct. And that was Olson did a study for us to determine if we could fill this area in and not impact the floodplain, but they also looked at the wetlands to make sure we didn't have any wetlands in the area.
Okay. Ms. Larson?
I really appreciate all the work that's been done on this site. I still have reservations about this particular location for the art piece. I know I did vote for approval of the location last June, but we talked about issues with the installation, and now that we've got some more hard numbers in on what the installation is actually going to cost, our materials from the meeting that was continued put this at a $579,000 installation cost. I don't know if that's changed with the information today, because we just have the 76,000 figure. But I really would like for us to take a step backward and look at our alternative sites again and consult with the Arts Council. To me, this is going to be, today, our most important art piece. It's not going to be done for the 75th anniversary. I really want to make sure that we do this right. And with the installation costs associated with this particular site, I just would really like for us to take a second look at this location and consider some alternatives.
Ms. Stoddard?
Thank you for that. I think that what we're proposing here kind of enables these numbers to be updated. So the geotech work will really provide very important information that'll help inform what was a very preliminary estimate. So I think with that, and then also the information that Mr. Lay shared about the fill, some of those numbers, would be changing. And I think what we want to make sure and would be able to do with the geotech work and the way that this is phased is look at, is there anything particular with this site that will suddenly cause the installation cost to rise beyond what we might think would be the kind of the preliminary numbers, so that we kind of have some surety with that. And I think if the numbers come back because the geotech work shows that the soils are less conducive and require more extensive footings, then I think that does enable the opportunity to then take a pause and look at different sites. So the way that it's phased is it would let us have that information and then bring it to you all if you wish it to be brought to you at that point. And before we proceed with having the engineering firm go down the path of then actually designing it, that can be considered.
So my question is, what we're asked to approve tonight is $76,000 and some dollars. The geotech portion of that is $12,000, and prior to that is $7,500 for field surveys, for a total of $19,500. Are we taking a pause after that $19,500? If so, why are we approving 76 tonight?
I can maybe ask if Ms. Bennett might be able to help me a bit with this, but my understanding of the way that the agreement is written is it allows the ability for the city to end the work after any of the phases, and then certainly allows the opportunity for the city to provide a green light to proceed with the rest of the phases. So the reason is just to have that in front of you this evening so that you have the ability to approve it. And again, it may be something that you all want to discuss if you do want it to come back after this first phase of geotech work and have it be something that the full council provides an authorization for.
Ms. Bennett?
Yes, it is a not-to-exceed amount, and each phase requires a notice to proceed from the city. So after phase one, staff and governing body can make a determination whether to proceed with phase two and so forth.
Okay. That makes me feel a little bit better. But I don't want to start, for the city to start putting money into a location that is ultimately not going to work out.
I think, and I'm gonna look at Mr. Lay, I think the idea behind the phases were partly because at some point the city may want to do something with the site, a pedestal sign, something, even if it's not the art piece. So the idea was to find out how much it would cost to do just the base work of anything, leaving the art out of it, and then slowly work forward on how much it would cost to do the art. Am I saying that close to right, Dave?
Yeah, and we do, like I mentioned earlier, we do have about 2,500 yards of fill that we need to put somewhere, or we have to pay the contractors to move it off-site. So if we were to pay the contractors to move that off, we've been paying, I think it's around $10 to $12 a cubic yard. So we'd be spending, just to remove the fill that we have at the Fire Station 1 and at the parks maintenance, it would be, what's that, $25,000 or so just to get rid of it. So this way, we want to bring some of that material down to this site so we can kind of start grading it out, because the plan is to try to hopefully beautify this entrance into the park over time.
Yeah, I'm all for beautifying the entrance to the park and putting the fill there. I just have some reservations about this particular fantastic art piece being there. So,
Yeah, I can't think of anything that would beautify that entrance more than this art piece. And I don't know where we would put a 40-foot wide piece of art and 28 feet tall.
well, I don't know either, but
I
I'd
mean,
like
we've
to look
talked
at
about it, you know, extensively. So I think to find out what the initial geotech stuff tells us will be good information. Ms. Claxton?
Yes, I just wanted to follow up on something that David said. The first thing is the fill. When you talk about the project, the two major components dollar-wise were the fill, because that was unknown. We're getting better numbers on that, as Ms. Stoddard and Dave both shared. The other thing is the parking lot. So that's $100,000 to add the lot, again, looking at phasing some of this. So those are the two major things that, and the piece itself, we talked about the weight of the piece, Councilmember Sippel mentioned that. That's going to be, you know, any site that it goes to, you're going to have certain things, and I think that was shared in the meeting that we had before, and then in some of the information that we received. You're still going to have some significant costs of installation for the footings wherever you put it. So I just wanted to share that.
Right, true. Thank you. Mr. Azultine?
Thank you, Mayor. We have a pretty elaborate process for selection and placement of art, which is codified, and we've been through that process. And this is just to see if the site that we've chosen is practicable from an engineering standpoint. And so it's just one step. And so if we decide it's not, then we have to have that conversation. But for now, you know, we've chosen the piece, we've picked the site, you know, and we need to move on it. So, and again, I mean, that, if it's not, I mean, we're probably going to end up doing something else there, so.
We might do something else there, but we will own this art piece because it's being constructed
And it's
as
a
we speak.
very large art piece.
Yes, very, very large. Ms. Harrison and Mr. Rawlings.
Thank you. And I do hope that there's room for conversation. Ms. Larson mentioned that the final, you know, tally on all the amounts for this, and mentioned the parking lot, or David just did. We don't have parking lots next to all of our public art, and I'm not 100% certain that I agree that we need a parking lot next to this piece of public art. There are sidewalks and bike paths right around it already, and streets that you can drive by it, and parking lots a quarter of a mile away that if you wanted to walk up to it, you could park down there by the soccer fields or what have you. So I don't know that a $100,000 parking lot really even has to occur here. That may be a part of another project for another element that comes in there. So, you know, when you start looking at some of these line items, you know, we don't have a parking lot by Dancers. We don't have a parking lot by Pastoral Dreamer. We don't have a parking lot by the three startled deer, and nor would we want to, but.
Spooked.
Spooked, not startled, they're spooked. So I don't feel like we have set a precedent that we must have parking lots next to our major public art. So I would like for even that item to maybe be under consideration, which, if you take $100,000 off of this project, makes it maybe a little bit easier to digest, but just food for thought.
Mr. Rawlings?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is a question for Dave. You've got two identified sources for landfill. Irrespective of what we do now or tonight, can you just move that fill in now? I mean, it makes sense. I mean, to build up that area anyway. So can you just tell the contractors at your supervision to start bringing in the fill?
Yep, we made an application for a land disturbance permit from Travis Building Department, so we are working on that. We're hoping to get that early, probably by Wednesday, and then the contractors will be ready to start moving that material in later this week. And we do have to, Public Works will do some prep work. We have to build a driveway off Lee Boulevard in order to access this site, so that'll be some of the work that'll be up front. It'll just be a rock driveway.
I'm going to show my naivete here, but can geotech work be done after that fill is put there? Or does that have to be done first?
Prefer to have it completed first.
That's what I
But
thought.
where we're going to place the material is not going to be
Oh, I
where the
see.
parking lot's at or where the art piece will be at. So we're going to locate it where the berms, the proposed berms at. And
Okay.
other areas like that.
Very good,
so.
very good. Ms. Harris, Kane?
Maybe I missed it, and I see that it says 3 days in the field, but how long do you anticipate Phase 1 to take?
Yeah, that would probably be about 2 to 3 days. Most of the survey work is completed. They did a lot of that up front, just trying to get this project moving forward. But they have, the bores will just take a few days, and they have probably a week's worth of office work.
And again, I know a little bit about fill when you're building a home, but from what I understand also, if you put fill down, it takes time. The fill has to sit and settle down before you can put any structure on top of fill dirt. So that I'm assuming is all going to be factored into our timing if this piece is coming in December?
That's correct. They'll use sheep's foot rollers to compact it. So we do it when we build the roadways all the time, bring in fill material and you sheep's roll it every 6 inches to get the compaction. You do your testing every 6 inches to make sure you do have proper compaction. But part of this will also include from the geotech, if we need to drill down to get piers, then it'll go clear. You want to go to the existing material.
Can you refresh my memory how many pounds this piece weighs?
Was it 20,000 or 30? How much? 28? 38,000.
And have we ever installed anything near 38,000 pounds before?
Bridges.
So certainly not an art piece, but.
Right, not an art piece, but we build bridges which have significant weight to them.
Right. And then I see where it says Phase 1, Phase 2, and then it says after notice to proceed by the city. And so you mentioned that, Mrs. Stoddard. So does after notice to proceed by the city means it comes back before Planning Commission and City Council? Or is that, who decides when we go from Phase 1 to Phase 2?
I think that may be an issue for the governing body to discuss in your deliberation about this item this evening. The way that it's written, we would presume that if the estimate showed something that would be in line or less than the estimates that were previously provided, staff, we could provide them the notice to proceed. If there's a desire that the governing body has that information and that comes back before you, we could have it back before this body and then provide a notice to proceed after consideration if that's desired.
It has to go through the planning commission, doesn't it? It doesn't?
Well, what we are being asked to approve this evening is the $76,230. If we want to split that up and just take it by these red-itemed phases, otherwise, if we give that amount and these all come in on target, our administrative staff could give notice to proceed.
Oh.
So it streamlines it. It will eventually go through the planning process for all of the other expenses. This is just for the Continental's initial work that would give all the pricing on, and with bid alternates, et cetera. Am I describing that correctly? Okay.
Great.
Go ahead, Ms. Kane.
Thank you. Personally, I've made myself very clear over and over and over. I love this piece, but once I heard that number, I don't love that piece in that spot. So personally, I would prefer if we had at least a chance to speak about it after Phase 1 before moving to Phase 2. That would be my preference. And unless I'm mistaken, the Arts Council has not had an opportunity to speak about this at all, because I was at the meeting before we knew the number, and there has not been another meeting. So the Arts Council, they may be aware of the number, but they've not had a chance to discuss this number at all. So that's, I think is a valid point, that they have not had a chance to even, like I said, discuss that number, let alone what possibilities may be out there. So that would be my preference. Thank you.
Mr. Osmond?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I had 2 points. First, one which was Julie's point a second ago on the fill. And although this is an art piece, you have to picture this as a development in the city. And what I mean by that is when you build a building, when you build an office building or a shopping center or something like that, unlike most art pieces, you're going to have to get geo, you're going to have to get an engineer, you're going to have to figure out things more than just a normal standard art piece. You can't just bring in fill. What you have to do is surcharge the ground in a specific area. We actually put more weight on the area that you're going to have that art piece on, so it compacts down. And what I'm concerned with is if we're rolling it out, and maybe I'm going to use the mayor's my naivety here also, but if you roll it out, you want to make sure that in different areas that if we're putting the fill on the site where we think the art piece is going to go or around that area, we want to make sure that that's compact, because that's a very, very heavy art piece, just like a building. The second point is we're throwing around numbers that we all understand up here, but the public might not understand. And when they see 76,000, 300,000, 500,000, there are different points or thresholds in which we have to come up with, do we move forward with the project or not? When you're coming up with a $570,000 number, that's the whole ball of wax, but that's just a guesstimate. What we're doing here first is the initial geotechnical and figuring out, is this a suitable location? And Mary, you said, let's be cautious and do it in phases. I absolutely agree, which is when you hire an architect or an engineer, you don't spend the full ball of wax, 76,000. You say, okay, let's do the bare minimum to figure out if it's even possible on this site. And if so, but I have to trust staff and say, okay, let's not come back to us every 2 seconds for these numbers. Let's give a ballpark approval. And if it comes in over, when we're seeing that first $20,000 or whatever, staff will have the opportunity to come back and say, this is instead of 500,000, or it could be 800,000. We don't know. And so you're just like when you build a house, you spend money initially up front with an architect, and you may lose money, but not a lot, in comparison to going through and spending it with engineers, architects, and interior designers to figure out then it doesn't work. So I'd like to give staff an opportunity at the beginning to initially go through the first part of this.
So, Mr. Lay, listening to Mr. Osmond's comments, as we look at this 7D and we look at these numbers, $7,500, $12,000, another $7,500, how far down on the list would we need to go to really have the answers that I think everyone is looking for here, like to know, is this site a go or not?
It'd be phase one. So with
You
the
mean the
geotech,
$7,500?
yeah, is that,
The field survey?
and
Plus
plus
the-
this
plus the
geotech,
12,000.
so
And the
7,500 plus the
12,000.
12,000, yeah. So
12.
about
Gonna spend
So
almost
those,
20,000.
those first two then?
Yes.
Or-
19.5.
Yeah, first phase includes the survey at 7,500, I believe.
Yes.
And then the geotech at 12 or 13.
Okay, so those two phases, and then you could come back to us. You think that would be done within a month?
we should hopefully have the geotech report back within a month, and then along with that, of course, they give specs on the foundation, but then also during construction on constructability. We believe we'll probably end up piering it, so we'll be probably drilling down to limestone is kind of what we're thinking, but
All right,
not knowing what's there.
all right. Ms. Phila?
I just kind of wanted to echo, I was going to say it, but now I can just echo what Councilmember Osmond discussed, and that some of these costs are going to be something we have to incur anyway. We've got land to move there now, and obviously a stopping point in a month before we go to phase 2 for discussion makes a good sense, but I think we can go ahead and do the contract so that we can move forward, knowing that many of the concerns we have is because staff has brought them to us. So I don't want to try and second guess the professionals who brought us the issues that we're debating and trying to prioritize this revised contract with the phases and very thoughtfully going through it. It speaks to their expertise and their understanding of what needs to be done. And, you know, it's a really good point to understand. It's like building a bridge, and it's not just, you know, putting a lawn ornament out front. So I do appreciate it, and we had extensive conversations, and no one in the council, with all of our collective knowledge of where we own land in the city, had come up with anything that we wanted to backtrack and start. Because as it was already stated, we're going to have to spend many of these costs no matter where we put it. So we do have this sculpture under construction, and I'm very pleased with the contract we have, and I'm very confident that staff can come back to us a month from today after phase 1 and give us a better feel for what we're looking at.
So, Ms. Bennett, I'm going to look to you for this next question. Should 7D be a resolution only approving $19,500? Should we edit that and not do the $76,230 at this time?
Not to exceed.
That's not the way the contract's written. We'd have to kind of rewrite the contract. I would suggest you go with this resolution with the direction that staff not proceed with phase 2 until they have approval of the governing body.
It'd be like phase 3. Phase 1 is $7,500.
No, it's both of them.
Well, no, the second one is $12,000 for the GO.
That's part of phase 1.
That's phase 1.
That's still part of phase 1.
19.
So the first 2 together are considered phase 1?
Yeah, that's the 19.5.
Phase 2 starts with the preliminary schematic design and design development plans.
I'm confident.
Maybe it's different. All right, so your suggestion, and I was looking at the draft packet, 7D instead of the final, so my apologies. So your suggestion is to approve the resolution with $76,230 with the caveat that at the conclusion of phase 1, you will bring it back to the governing body for deliberation on whether to proceed with phase 2.
Yes.
Okay. Yes, right. But the resolution itself is for
It's
$76,230.
up to.
Yes, not to exceed.
Yeah, exactly. That too, yeah.
Okay,
I'd like to make a motion to approve the resolution with the understanding that the staff will come back to the council after phase 1 and the expenditure for the field surveys and the geotech support for the council to deliberate whether to proceed for phase 2 and beyond.
Second.
motion from Ms. Phyllis, second from Mr. Eseltine. And is there any further discussion, Ms. Kane?
I have a question. Mr. Lay, you mentioned peering, which
That scares me.
yeah, well, yeah, that's another conversation. But was the peering in the 579,000? Did that was that a peering part of that number? Because yes, was it part of that number?
Yeah, on the estimate included 4 piers for it, and then also included, the base is 20 feet by 20 feet, and it was 3 feet thick, so they over-designed that estimate.
So
At
it
least in
did
my opinion,
include
they did.
piering on all
But it
4 of the
included-
corners of the 20 by 20.
I believe there's 4 piers in that estimate that were approximately, I think, 20 feet deep.
I will restate one of my comments earlier, is if it comes back before the governing body, that the way it's being discussed right now does not come back to Arts Council or Planning Commission.
It would have to go through the planning commission, though.
Oh, even after phase 1? Even after we
Well,
just?
eventually, if it goes forward,
Yeah, no, I
it has to
understand.
go
After
through
the
both
76,000.
bodies.
Right, after it's a 76,000, but after the 19.5, it's gonna come to us, it's not gonna come to arts or planning.
Because it's a question of dollars at
Yes.
that point, and that's really our purview.
Understood, yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
Mr. Rawlings?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was not comfortable with this contract until we decided to carve out Phase 1 and make a determination whether we should move forward or not. But Mr. Azeltine made a comment about we have a process, it's codified, we got to move forward. Shame on this councilman, but the first time that I ever heard about this cost I'm still choking with at over 500,000, that's the first time I heard that. And I have a problem with that. Part of the process, I think, ought to be looked at from this point forward for any other further art piece. Before it comes to the council for approval, there ought to be a hard copy, or a hard estimate of what it would cost to install, plus minus something that's reasonable. But that part, I'm not happy with.
Couldn't agree more.
And it should have come, and I don't know why we waited until it comes to the council with a surprise. And even the city administrator called us and alerted us this is going to be a surprise to everybody.
I think the reason is that this has never happened before. We've never
I
had
understand that,
We've
yeah.
never had a piece this big, we've never had a site like this.
Yep.
And that's, it
So-
would, in a perfect world, we would have had that policy in place, so I agree with you.
That's my point, yeah.
Yeah, so going forward, absolutely.
Mr. Sippel?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. You used the term naivete. I think that's my situation right now. We had a work session on this piece a month or so ago, and if I recall correctly, we asked the Art Council to give us a couple of alternative locations. Am I totally confused?
Yes.
Because I know I'm the single council person that voted against this location, and I'm going to be consistent this evening with that. But I thought that we were not certain that this was the best location in the city of Leawood for this art piece. Maybe that's the reason I had preconceived notion when I walked away from that meeting. I know we didn't vote on it, it was a work session, but I thought that we said we would like to look at alternative locations from the Art Council, and that has not been forthcoming in the last 30 or 60 days. So maybe I'm the single voice out there. So I'm easily corrected if I'm in the wrong. So
Well, there was a lot of discussion that evening.
Right.
And we talked about other possible sites, and there were detriments to all of them, including this site. But the number I'm remembering, and I don't have my paperwork in front of me like Ms. Larson does, but it was over 200,000 to locate this anywhere in a parking lot that's flat and solid with no fill need. I mean, it's just an expensive, large site. And somebody said up here, this has never happened before, but I recall a piece of art that we were going to put in the middle of a lake. And fortunately, we hadn't purchased it because we found out it couldn't get wet. So there are situations that come up when you're dealing with art, and I don't disagree, it'd be great to know installation costs before we commission a piece. This is being done just for the city of Leawood 75th. And it's being built as we speak, so.
Regardless of your feelings, I think it's wise that we're waiting in this wading into this in a very incremental fashion, and we're gonna, spend that $19,000 to see if the site is even feasible. And so the rest of this is a conversation for another evening, I think, so.
Well, we haven't voted yet on the resolution, which was made by Ms. Phila, seconded by Mr. Hazeltine, and that ultimately is going to come back here after 19,500. So if there's no further discussion, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
All right, may I see a show of hands of the ayes, please? Ayes from Ms. Harrison, Mr. Osmond, Mr. Rawlings, Ms. Phila, and Mr. Hazeltine. And show of hands of the nays, please. Ms. Kane, Mr. Sippel, and Ms. Larson. So the motion is approved, and we will see what comes back before us in a month. So thank you, Ms. Claxton and Ms. Kaufman. Thank you for your work on this, and I know you'll continue to work. Moving now to the consent agenda, items 8A through Q. I'd like to ask if anyone would like to pull anything for discussion off the consent agenda. Anyone want to pull anything?
Move to approve.
Second.
All right, a motion from Mr. Osmond, second from Mr. Hazeltine, to approve the consent agenda in its entirety. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. It's approved unanimously. Thank you. Moving now to the mayor's report. I would first like to extend our sincere sympathies to Councilmember Julie Kane and her family regarding the passing of her father, Donald Semple, on May 25th. He was a Leawood resident living at the healthcare resort of Leawood for the past 4 years. And his beautiful obituary mentioned that Don was 88 years old and passed away on the 33rd anniversary of the tragic car accident which killed his beloved wife, Nancy, who was called Gussie. May he rest in peace. Our sincere appreciation to Leawood Welcomers President Lynn Strout and the Welcomers members for the donation of a whitebud tree and plaque commemorating their 65th anniversary and Leawood's 75th anniversary. The tree sits near the sculpture dancing just north of City Hall. And thanks also to Councilmember Lisa Harrison and her husband Tim, who donated an additional whitebud tree and plaque that's located near the same location. It's a beautiful addition to our park system, so thank you for that. Council members Larson, Harrison, Sippel, Hazeltine, and Kane joined me at the dedication of the new Aquatic Center facilities. City Administrator Diane Stoddard and numerous members of our Leawood volunteers were also in attendance. Artist Dirk Van Keppel of Rock Cottage Glassworks was present to describe his beautiful piece of public art titled Reflections. And I'd like to thank API Chair Kim Hinkle and Park Recreation and Arts Director Chris Claxton for organizing a lovely event. I attended a Kansas City Chamber, Kansas State Affairs wrap-up luncheon today, and we had a most interesting panel discussion with Senate President Ty Masterson, Speaker of the House Dan Hawkins, who came up from Wichita, House Majority Leader Chris Croft, and Senator Ethan Corson. And the bulk of the conversation was lamentation that the proposed tax plan, the single rate tax, did not prevail during this session. And they told us to all expect to see it again next year with great hopes that it will pass. I received a nice surprise from Representative Sharice David's office when her district staff assistant, Valentina Diaz Yepes, told me that they had created a congressional record statement in the city's honor to commemorate our 75th anniversary. And I would like to read it to you all. She brought it over framed, ready to hang here at City Hall. House of Representatives celebrating the 75th anniversary of the city of Leawood. Miss Davids of Kansas, Mr. Speaker, I rise today to celebrate the 75th anniversary of the city of Leawood. The city of Leawood is celebrating the growth and prosperity of their community. Leawood is located in Johnson County, approximately 10 miles southwest of downtown Kansas City, the perfect balance of a busy city and peaceful small town. The city of Leawood will commemorate the anniversary throughout the year with activities in the recreation center and scavenger hunts through historic sites. The city will also unveil its new logo and a 28-foot tall sculpture named Reaching. The 12,000 pounds of clear acrylic and powder-coated aluminum olive tree created by Leawood native William Nematoff will be placed by one of the city's parks. The city is also publishing a book titled Leawood, The Journey Continues, containing history from 1997 to 2022. Leawood is one of the fastest growing populations within the state of Kansas and prides itself on its top-rated public school systems, Shawnee Mission School District and the Blue Valley Schools. Leawood is also implementing sustainable practices through their master plan to increase bike paths and safer walking areas. City leaders are using extensive field research to create a self-propelled city to increase global, local, and personal sustainability. Mr. Speaker, please join me in recognizing the city of Leawood on their 75th anniversary. I am honored to represent this exceptional city and wish them many more years of growth and prosperity. Sharice Davids, Member of Congress, 3rd District, Kansas.
Well.
I thought it was lovely, and I have sent a note on behalf of all of us to thank her and her assistant for delivering it. That concludes my mayor's report. We have no council members' reports this evening. Ms. Stoddard, do you have any city administrator report?
I do not, Mayor, thank you.
All right, and we have no staff reports this evening. We have no committee recommendations. We have no old business. We move now to item 15A, new business, ordinance amending sections 1-860 entitled Purpose of Fund and section 1-861 entitled Source of Fund pertaining to the Economic Development Fund role. Ms. Stoddard.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, as this was discussed during the Capital Improvements Program work session that we held, this was an idea to expend some funds from the Economic Development Fund. And in discussing this further with the city attorney, there was a thought that in order to make it extremely clear that the funds could be spent that way, should the governing body ultimately wish to do that, and you would vote on that particular expenditure as part of the upcoming budget process. This ordinance in front of you this evening would just broaden out the Economic Development Fund to enable the use of the funds in essentially most any way that the governing body wishes to expend it. When you look at the charter ordinance number 38 that is cited in the ordinance, that language is extremely broad and I think indicates a number of possible ways to expend funds, but begins with kind of a statement that it's including these things, but not everything. And then at the very end, there's a statement that it could be spent in any way that the governing body would so choose. So this would achieve that this evening, and then again, the decision related to expenditure of economic development funds in the way that we discussed would be one that would be coming later as part of the budget. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
And I believe there's a typo on the cover page on source, but in the ordinance it is correct. So just commenting on that. Any questions regarding this from Ms. Stoddard? I think it's a great use.
Move for approval?
Second.
Motion from Mr. Rollins, second from Ms. Phila. If there's no discussion, roll call, please.
Councilmember Harrison?
Aye.
Councilmember Kane?
Aye.
Councilmember Azaltine?
Aye.
Councilmember Sippel?
Aye.
Councilmember Larson?
Aye.
Councilmember Phila?
Aye.
Councilmember Osman?
Aye.
Councilmember Rawlings?
Aye.
Okay, it's approved unanimously, thank you. 15B is to approve the plan for obligation and expenditure of the city's ARPA funds. Ms. Stoddard.
Yes, this topic has been discussed several times, and we've had different ideas presented to you with regard to the expenditure of these funds. During one of the last work sessions where we talked about this, there was a desire to look at the possibility of expending these funds in the most expeditious way as possible. I think there was some concern about potential clawback of funds that was being discussed at the time, and that probably still looms, at least to some degree, until the funds are obligated and expended. We do have some time to be able to obligate and expend them, as indicated in the memo, but by expending them on public safety salaries during the calendar year 2023, we believe that most expeditiously meets the rules of the ARPA funds and also most expeditiously expends them. It would enable monies that then were expended on salaries to be freed up to fund the various programs and projects that we've discussed before for use of ARPA funds. So that would still be able to be accomplished while expending them in an expeditious manner and getting the report filed with the federal government. So
And
I'd be
I
happy
want to thank you and your team for coming up with this. Because
The
I
team
do
did a
think
great
it's-
job.
I think it's very important, so thank you. Questions? Mr. Sippel, Mr. Azaltine.
Just one question, Diane. What is the magnitude of public safety salaries? How much of an impact will this be? This is $5 million too. What is the magnitude of public safety salaries in our budget? I should have been able to look that up, but I neglected to do that.
I might ask Mr. Cobby. Don, would you be able to help answer that question?
Don Cobby, Finance Director. Anticipating I might ask this question. A full year's salaries only, not including benefits for public safety, is $12 million. And salaries and benefits is $17 million. And year-to-date, and I say that year-to-date being through the end of May, I believe we've spent about $3.8 million in public safety salaries. So
Okay.
that would count towards that. So it gives you, a 5.8 would be salaries and benefits.
Thank you, Mr. Cobby.
Don't go away.
Mr. Azaltine.
So this has already been funded, and we're going to use the ARPA funds to move that money over. Will those funds that have already been allocated be just in the general fund, or will we have a separate line item or whatever for ARPA allocation?
I can give you kind of what we've talked about, which is I think we will take those, for each of those projects that were on there, we would anticipating moving those to the fund that might normally fund that. So for some of the technology, it would go to the equipment fund. If it was a project, it would go to that project fund. But we would clearly outline in the budget where that money was being transferred to.
And as we decide if it's not going to go in that fund, we can just do a budget amendment?
If necessary, yes, you could do a budget amendment. You would definitely be able to revise the budget. Whether or not it required a formal amendment would be up to what the expenditure limit had been for the year.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Covey or Ms. Stoddard?
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, motion from Mr. Osman and a second from Ms. Villa. If there's no further discussion, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. It's approved unanimously. Again, thank you very much for this. 15C is scheduled governing body meeting on Tuesday, June 20th, 2023 at 7 p.m.
Move to approve?
Second?
Motion from Ms. Phila, second from Mr. Sippel. I do want to point out one thing. You probably all know this. June 20th, well, I didn't say it, I don't believe, but it is a Tuesday. And it is a Tuesday because Monday is June 19th, which is Juneteenth.
Okay.
So it is a holiday that I think maybe we only had last year for the first time.
Right,
I think so.
So,
We ever did,
thank you.
or did we
I
even
don't think we
have
ever
it?
did Columbus Day.
We approved it. Well, Columbus Day is not a holiday.
I know, not anymore.
No, but at any rate, I just wanted to make sure you have it right on your calendar.
Yeah, better go change that.
So, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. It's approved unanimously. All right, having no further business to come before this body, we are adjourned. Thank you.